Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Hawkeye Beacon and Rivals.com. I'm your lead analyst and host, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined here by Ross Binder, managing editor of the site early this morning. Well, not necessarily early, depending on who you are. Little over 9 a.m. this morning. Adam to join us shortly. Before we get started, make sure that you subscribe there on YouTube. Drop a like, drop a comment. Let us know what you're thinking about Iowa sports, because it depends on, I guess, what sport you're the biggest fan of at the moment. Men last night fall to Purdue to lose their fifth of their last six games. Number seven, Purdue. So I think we all saw this one coming, Ross. 90 to 81. Wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like Josh Dix and Payton Sandfort were awesome last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody didn't have a good feeling about this game, uh, for a while before this one tipped off. Obviously, felt even worse about it once the news about Owen Freeman came out earlier this week. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, much more in just a minute. But yeah, so they go into that game, you think, oh man, this is going to be ugly. Number 17, Purdue's just been rolling. This is not going to be good. And then, they hung with them. They had a tie game at half. They led for a good portion of the first half, right? I mean, Iowa was
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they probably should have led going into the halftime, and then Braden Smith was Braden Smith.
right. Yeah, I mean, their best player, arguably the best player in the Big Ten, hits a big shot at the buzzer, ties the game up. And then in the second half, I think we've seen this script before with Iowa. The defense gets a little lax, gives up some runs, and Purdue, pulls away, but they don't really, pull away that far. Iowa's, thanks to Dix and Sandfort, like you said, they always were hitting a shot or something to keep it just close enough. It's like, well, this is still a game, still competitive. And, Iowa had, what was it, 80-77, I think. So just down a bucket.
Yeah,
I think with the ball, with 2 minutes to go, something like
Price
that.
or not Price. Peyton missed a three. I think they missed a couple threes that could have tied it, if I remember right. At least,
Yeah, so
I know at least Peyton.
right. So I mean, they had a chance to tie the game, late, didn't get it, and then free throws and yada yada. Purdue ends up winning by 9, but pretty spirited effort, and I think to me, it's the kind of game plan they're gonna have. That's how they're gonna have to play if they're gonna win any games left this year. They need monster games out of Sandfort and Dix. Like they gotta just, they had like 50 points combined, 49 points combined, I think, last night. I think they're going to have to do that just about every game to give Iowa a chance. And then you got to limit turnovers. And, I don't think Iowa's going to win the rebounding battle very much the rest of the
No.
season at all, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're laughing hysterically because like Iowa win the rebounding battle without Freeman. Come on. And I get it, but like they can't get like destroyed on the glass. Basically, they gotta, you know, keep it close-ish. And for a while, I think they were hitting those marks last night, and then it just kind of it Purdue pulled away because Purdue's a really good team. So
I think that's really what it came down to is that was probably some of the most inspired basketball Iowa has played this season. I think I put
it's
it on.
definitely the best we've seen them play in, well, since that Indiana game they won, right?
Oh
In
yeah,
Carver, like 3 weeks ago or something. Like
yeah.
by far the best they've played in this like losing skid bit, pretty much.
There were stretches where they looked good against Penn State, and then they almost
I mean, they almost
lost
lost
it.
that game. They
Yeah,
probably should have lost that game. Like you shoot 1 for 7 at the free throw line in the second half, whatever. You're lucky to win a game when you do that for sure.
I don't I don't know. Like there are just so many factors about this team that you look at, and it's just like it shouldn't be that way, right? The free throws. Price Sanford going over 2 last night. Josh Diggs going 4 for 7. Price is way too good of a shooter. Like, and I've said this before on this podcast, to shoot free throws like that. They shot 62% from the free throw line last night.
He's
68
60,
so far this season.
he's a 65% price is a 65% shooter this season, which is unconscionable for a guy who's as good a 3-point shooter and a good overall jump shooter as he is. Like he should be shooting at least like 75, 78% at the free throw line, bare minimum, and probably like north of 80, honestly.
Oh yeah.
And
I
and
think it's
Diggs, Dix, he just had a bad game, I think, which is really unfortunate. He was great otherwise, but I think he's shooting like over 80% on the year. So he's been solid at the line, but yeah, 4 of 7, that hurts a lot.
I think Josh was gassed
Yeah.
last night towards the end. Which how can you blame him? They were all over him last night, making shots tough, and he was still making shots. Um, but yeah, Josh very much the best free throw shooter on the team. I think he's like north of 85% for the year. But
Yeah, he and Payton, the other Sandfort, are both, I think, over 80. But yeah,
right,
Dix has been the best all year.
it's like Josh, Peyton, and then a massive drop off. And Peyton's missed some big free throws this year too.
Yep.
Um, it was just a bit of oh well, I guess what sticks out to me with Price is I do think it's mental right now. I don't know if you saw it on the broadcast, but I'm pretty sure I saw Peyton walk up to him when he had his head down after the first missed free throw and pull it up, say you got this more or less. So and he's a sophomore, still figuring it out. I right
Yeah,
now
it's not like
right now it's not good, but
no.
in the grand scheme of things, I'm not necessarily concerned.
I don't think so. I mean, you look at his like mechanics; they seem fine. Like
Yeah,
I'm not. It's not like you watch him shoot free throw and it's like, oh man, what is going on there? Like that doesn't have a prayer of going in, or like
right.
such a low percentage looking shot or something. Like the mechanics are fine. So yeah, then it's just mental, and I mean that's still not. You can't snap your fingers and make that little mental block go away, obviously, but it's easier to fix that than mechanical flaws often. So.
Right. The other thing I was gonna say regarding the guys coming out and having that inspired basketball playing the way that they did last night. I put this in the thread. It was like FU ball. Like, okay, you guys are gonna doubt us. We're gonna go upset the number 7 team in the country. Now they fell short, but that's really what I thought Josh Dix and Peyton Sandfort were last night. And honestly, I saw a little bit of that from Evan Bronze, the way he played. He was awesome. I thought he should have finished the game. Um, Riley got the start. It might be Evan going forward. It might be Logi going forward. It's not. I don't think it's going to be Riley anymore. I think he got his first and only start for his career at Iowa. But he wasn't bad. There were some well, at the start of the game, I think he might have been in his own head a little bit. He just looked like he was making some low IQ plays. And to me, I know that Evan Bronze isn't going to do that. You know, our the conversation around Evan is, oh, he's just maybe a step too slow because of Belmont. But he's that type of player coming from a mid major. But you're going to get effort. You're going to get smart plays from Evan. So I think he's your starter going forward. And obviously he's an athlete. So we'll see how that shakes out. But overall, they didn't contribute a ton, but their presence, given the absence of Owen Freeman, I thought was important, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the big question marks we had for sure going into last night was, how the heck does Iowa replace Freeman? And those three guys, they're not replacing him per se. Like you don't replace 17 and 7 a game. That's not, with the guys Iowa has, that's just not happening. But they were a super, you have a super credible effort and, high energy, just some really good plays, like you said, from all of them, but especially Bronze. And yeah, I think, for what Iowa has, they gave Iowa some good minutes there, which is what you wanted to see from those three guys.
Logi didn't register any stats, but he finished the game really well defensively, I thought. Um, and he is the most high-end guy of the three. Evans in his final year, Riley's a redshirt junior. He has the most potential. Logi does, but we'll see on that front. But at this point, I don't know that you're taking moral victories, but the expectations are now so low that last night was kind of a moral victory. They only lost by single digits, right? It's
Right,
like,
right.
and of course, right now there are rumors swirling around Owen, and what his future is in Iowa City. Wasn't at the game last night, had surgery the day prior. Um, and who knows how that's ultimately going to shake out. The other difference last night was starting Drew Thelwell at the point and having Brock come off the bench. Brock did play well in that reserve role, I thought. 11 points. He was the third leading scorer behind Josh and Peyton. Drew didn't play great. I think he might have to have some adjust. Braden Smith kind of cooked him a couple times. And Braden Smith's one of the best point guards in the country. Like, let's be real about how good he is for a second. But there were times where Drew his feet looked like they were stuck in quicksand, and I don't know that I've seen that from Drew ever. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but I did prefer the starting lineup that we saw last night, and we've been talking about starting Drew and Sadu since before the season, and it
Yep.
took where they're at now for that to finally happen.
Yep. 20 games in and no Freeman and in a losing streak, but we got it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a long road ahead, and we've talked about the schedule. I wouldn't say ad nauseum, but a lot here on HawkCast. But I'll remind you what it is. At home at number 20, or excuse, at home number 21 Wisconsin, at Rutgers, at number 18 Maryland, Oregon, Washington, Oregon no longer ranked. At Illinois, at Northwestern, Michigan State, number 9 Michigan State, number 23 Illinois, and then at Nebraska. So it's, I mean, I
Tough
put up,
games.
yeah, like if they play the way they did last night, they're going to have a chance a lot of games.
Yep.
But even if they play that way, you know, at number 18 Maryland against number 21 Wisconsin, who beat them by 30 at the beginning of January, at number 23 Illinois against number 9 Michigan State, like they're going to have a chance. But the way I said it to the other media members last night is like they might put this type of effort against Wisconsin on Saturday because that's probably going to be the best attended game that they have the rest of the season. They
Yeah.
might put that type of effort forth, and again, that FU ball kind of mentality. But the way I see that shaking out after this game is they probably go to Rutgers and get blown the hell out. Probably go to Maryland, get blown the hell out. And then who knows? I
It's going to be hard to bring that kind of juice on the road, I think, to those games, especially if they don't, if they don't get a win in that Wisconsin game and they don't have like, the good vibes off of that win. If you go on the road losing, what would that be, 6 or 7 at that point?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's gonna be tough. Um, Now, while we are waiting for Adam here, let's go to your specialty here, Ross. And more recent news as well. Wrestling, they get a massive commit last night. Number one, number two in the country, depending on what service you're looking at. Bo Bassett picks the Hawkeyes, and you were telling us, what did you say? You'd eat your hat if
Yeah,
it ended
I
up in
was not
Iowa.
I was not super confident that he was going to choose Iowa, and I was wrong. Not upset to be wrong about that one for sure. It just seemed like things were trending towards either Penn State or Oklahoma State. He named a top four on Monday. He had a interesting recruiting process. He started with 80 teams that he listed on like a graphic and stuff like last summer, and he'd been like slowly narrowing it down like over the last how I don't know 8 months or something, and like every week he would chop off a few more teams, and he got down to four on Monday, and it was Iowa, Penn State, Okie State, and Virginia Tech. Penn State, obviously, the behemoth in the sport right now. Since Cale Sanderson got there, they have won title after title after title after title. Briefly interrupted by Ohio State won one, the pandemic stopped one, Iowa won one. But they are the behemoth. Bassett is a Pennsylvania kid. He's from Jonestown. Um, so Penn State does not lose a lot of local guys, obviously. So there was a lot of thought about him going there. And then Oklahoma State is another historic power in the sport, a lot of success. Not as much recently, but they did just hire a big time coach, David Taylor, who was a star wrestler for Penn State, Olympian, won a gold medal for the US a few years ago. Just a phenomenal wrestler, and someone that like modern kids know him extremely well, very familiar with what he can do. So super popular in that regard. And it seems like they have a lot, Penn State and Okie State both have a lot of NIL. And, that was thought to be a factor in swinging him there. Obviously, that didn't happen. He announced last night he's coming to Iowa. Um, a lot of rumors about the NIL he's getting there. Rumors over the weekend of 5 million, not that much.
I was gonna say, isn't that
That
like,
would,
I mean, a swarm's a different thing, but I was like,
yeah.
is that swarm's budget? Like,
Yeah. Like
like
that's crazy. But I have no doubt that he got a healthy NIL package to choose Iowa. But, he chose Iowa because he's been a Hawkeye fan since he was a little kid. He has liked the Iowa program, for years, liked what the Brands brothers have done. And he idolizes Spencer Lee, who was a former Hawkeye great. Um, was here, won 3 national titles, 3 Big Ten titles, went for a gold medal last year and came up just a little short and got a silver. He's also a Pennsylvania kid, Spencer Lee. He was a star in Pennsylvania who, so this is Bassett kind of following the same blueprint of, super celebrated Penn State high school wrestler, has a great career out there, spurns the, major blue blood prestige local program in Penn State, comes to Iowa, and, it's a great monster get for Iowa, but it also is it's one guy. For a wrestling meet, a wrestling duel, you need 10 guys. To win a tournament, you need several good guys. And Iowa does have, this is part of it. They've had some good gets in recent years, not to the level of Bassett or Spencer Lee, 7, 8 years ago. They got Leo DeLuca, who was a highly ranked top 10 uh, lightweight, going to be 125 or 133. Got him last year. He is coming this coming fall. He'll be on campus. And the hope is that Bassett will lead to some other, big name guys coming in as well. One of his teammates is either the number 1 or number 2 guy in the class with him, Jax Forrest, goes to the same high school. So yeah, that is a powerhouse tandem that program has in Bassett and Forrest. Forrest has been on all the visits to Iowa City with Bassett prior to the commit last night. He's someone that they are actively pursuing. He's a lighter weight guy, probably 133 or 141 in that range. But yeah, getting another, top 2, top 3 guy would be massive. And they got Angelo Ferrari, who's an upper weight guy. He's wrestling on 184 this year. And he was another, top 5, top 10-ish recruit. And that's how I was gonna, if they're gonna have a shot at chasing down Penn State for titles, that's how they're gonna have to do it, is just stacking blue chip recruits as best they can, because that's how Penn State got where they are. They have stacked and stacked and stacked these blue chip recruits for several years, and that's how they keep winning title after title after title. And Iowa's done really well in the portal lately, gotten some really good guys. But that's kind of a volatile way to build a team, obviously. If you can build it through high school recruiting, you get a little more stability, and you get those guys for 2, 3, 4 years versus a portal guy you're going to have for unless you get them real young, after 1 year or something, you're only going to get like probably 1, maybe 2 years of eligibility with them.
so for those of us who don't follow wrestling super closely, raising my hand right here, I turned on the Iowa Penn State duel the other night, and that was not a great exposure for me for Iowa wrestling. Particularly to watch Ben Keeter, as he is a dual sport athlete. But I guess my first thought is this effectively like a Caden Proctor situation for Penn State? Like this is an in-state kid that ends up going elsewhere.
It is a little bit. I think the difference is it's
Voted
like that.
on signing day.
Well, yeah, it's not right before signing day. And then it's like for Iowa, losing Proctor is huge because there aren't a lot of guys that good in the state or that Iowa's going to get in their class. Like, yeah, Penn State would have loved to have Bassett for sure. He's one of the absolute top guys in this class. They love adding guys like that and just keeping that train they've built rolling. But I mean, they're going to get other really good dudes too. There's other good recruits in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. They're going to get another good 149, which is what Bassett projects to in college. So, I think it stings, but it's not like, Iowa getting a guy like Proctor in football is, that's a program shifting get in recruiting. Like that is a guy that, that's a potential, he could win trophies, go to the NFL, et cetera. Like that's the linchpin of your offensive line potentially for 3, 4 years. Bassett would be huge for them, but the guy they'll get to replace him will probably also be really good. So the drop off for what they'll get versus what Iowa gets to replace Proctor is the difference in my eyes.
Okay. Um, all right. Well, I also while we have you talking about this, is he a 125? Is he a 133?
Bassett is going to
Yeah,
be 149. And he's been a
149.
144 in high school, and
Look
so yeah,
smaller
no,
on in the
yeah,
ground.
he's not a big dude for sure. But most wrestlers, a lot of them look small,
Okay,
unless
fair
they're
enough.
unless they're Ben Keeter. He's a big fella. Well, not heavy, but just kind of a tall,
Right.
especially for a wrestler. He's really pretty tall.
Now, with the recruits that you mentioned prior to, how does he fit um like the Angelo Ferraris and such? How does he fit like as far as the weight class goes, or are they like how does everything
Yeah,
come together?
yeah. Right now, like they've actually done a good job of it's not overstacking like certain weights where they're just like like oh you got like 3 guys for one spot. Like how's that gonna work? Like there is nobody else they have at 149 that is anywhere close to his potential or his ability. So he'll slot right in there. That will not be an issue. Forrest would slot right in if they got him. DeLuca, he's the top guy. If he holds at 125 for sure, he's the top guy. Like I said, Ferrari's up at 184. That is one area where they have an issue. He's kind of split time with Gabe Arnold this year, who was another like top 10-ish, top 20-ish recruit Iowa landed a few years ago. And Gabe is also like a 174, 184. So right now they've kind of been splitting time at 184 this season. The plan and hope for the future is that Iowa loses a few guys at 174 after this year. So then Gabe can slide down there, take that spot, and then Ferrari would have 184 all to himself for the next couple of years, ideally.
Ideally, we shall see. Uh,
Ideally.
other recent news that we'll talk about before we get to women's hoops with Adam when he joins us is Cooper DeJean headed to the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, I've talked a lot about being from the same school district, and we don't have to go into that too much, but it's just like an added level of pride. Like we're supposed to be objective journalists, all that, but you also get to know the kids, right, as you're
Oh
talking.
yeah.
And it's different for myself and Cooper because I know his dad, I know his mom, I know his brothers too. I probably know Jax better than I know Coop at this rate, um, but it's just cool, man. To have somebody from a town of 1,000 that's right down the road from Ida Grove, a kid that I've gotten to know through this media availabilities, and man, he's just that different type of athlete, right? Like to be able to step in as a second round pick and play that nickel spot for them after sparingly playing the cash at Iowa, but mostly playing corner. He's really, I think he's one of the top corners in terms of, or the coverage DBs in terms of like allowing touchdown passes or anything like that on PFF. He hasn't allowed one, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I don't think so. Or if he has, not very many, like, one or two, something like that.
And to return punts, it's hard. It's almost hard to be more impressed by Cooper than we were when he was at Iowa, but like now I currently am. He you were talking about bowl prep here in the outline. I guess they did some media availability this week. Gave a shout out to Caitlin Clark, which was funny. They asked him who his most famous person in his contacts was. He
Yeah.
said Caitlin Clark. What about the photo ops here? What were you mentioning there?
Oh, it just, the same thing from like Super Bowl media day and stuff. He's been, any sort of Iowa connection just pops up. And like he was doing a photo with Dana Hughes, who does some radio work for the Kansas City Chiefs. But he is himself a former Hawkeye football player and baseball player in the early 90s. So they've got, that shared bond. And they actually both wore number 3 at Iowa, in fact. But yeah, just just those kind of stories you see with, whenever the Iowa gets a guy in the Super Bowl, which they've had pretty good track record of that in recent years of at least one dude. And Coop is the highest profile Iowa guy in the Super Bowl since, I mean, they had Kittle. Is that last year? The Niners were there last year, right? Yeah,
Are they?
that sounds right. Let's go with
Okay,
it.
well, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Kittle's a super high profile, but Coop is, he's a guy that plays a lot for the Eagles. He's going to be on the field on, like you said, he's going to be a slot corner on defense. He's going to be returning punts. So he's going to have some opportunities to, really impact that game. If he can force a turnover, that would be huge. Chiefs have not turned the ball over very often in this playoff run, obviously. So if he forces a turnover, that's huge. A big punt return, that would be a massive play in the game, potentially turn things in the Eagles' favor, or do something to give the offense a good short field to work with or something. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do. He was one of the most exciting and just fun players to watch at Iowa over the last 5 years, basically. And so it's really awesome to see him get a chance, be able to do what he's done in the NFL right off the jump. I think people were excited when he went to the Eagles because like, oh, he's going to a really good team. He can have some success there. But I mean, who expected him to be a key player on a team going to the Super Bowl, right out of the jump? Like that is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, and just watching him on the field, he looks like the same, not the same, but effectively the same player as he was at Iowa. Impactful,
Yep.
confident. I mean, he laid the wood to
Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry. I was like, Derrick, what's his last name? Derrick Henry this year. Um, he looks like he belongs. Looks like a first round pick.
Absolutely.
I think
Eagles
they're,
got to steal. We said that 9 months ago, whenever it was, and
yep, making plenty,
vindication.
making plenty of teams regret not taking him right now.
Absolutely.
49ers. Um, so yes, we'll be watching that. We'll be seeing how Coop does. He and Reed Blankenship, exciting whites is some of the funniest content that I've seen on Twitter this
Yeah.
this last few months. I
Yeah, they've
saw,
leaned into
but
that.
I saw a rumor that they were going to start a podcast called Exciting Whites.
Oh my
I don't
God.
think that's legit, but like,
Yeah.
uh,
I don't know. Just based on how, Coop was when he was at Iowa in terms of like with the media and stuff. And
that's true.
he's a great guy. It's like, man, I don't know if I see him hosting a podcast
Yeah,
necessarily.
that doesn't sound like it's up his alley.
Also, that's our block, Cooper. Like, come on, leave us
Right?
something.
Yeah, right. Leave us something, dude. Uh, he's gonna start a blog or something like that.
Oh
To
my God.
be awesome at that. Like, come on, dude. Anyway, let's move on to the women. Upset in number 4, USC at home. Caitlin Clark's retirement, her retirement jersey, or the retiring of her jersey in that same game as well. And from everything I've heard, we didn't go. You and I, Ross, didn't go, but Adam and Braden went. And from everything I've heard, it was a similar environment to Ohio State last year, which was I've said it a bunch of times, Ohio State, a religious experience. I mean, it's almost like you have to, and I'm in tune with my emotions, almost like you have to fight back tears at times. It's just such a special moment and such a transcendent moment for women's basketball. Adam, did it feel that way this last a weekend with the environment at Caitlin Clark's jersey retirement ceremony, them upsetting number 4 USC? What was that like?
Yeah, it was an incredible environment. You mentioned the Ohio State game last year, and this was right there up there with it. And it was certainly loud enough. It topped 110 decibels on my iPhone, and another media member, or excuse me, on my watch, another media member had one on his phone, and it was up to 118 decibels. It was loud. Like it was enough to make your ears hurt. That is my scientific, explanation of that. In terms of the overwhelming emotions of it, I think Ohio State, especially what it, represented for that moment of the season, the game itself, that was, and obviously the Molly Davis injury that happened in the middle of it too, that the game itself carried a little bit more emotional heft at that point. But excuse me, during the video package of the jersey retirement ceremony, they had solicited videos from fans from across the world to talk about what Caitlin meant to them. And a lot of them came from the Children's Hospital. Some of them came from people who had been, following along with her, who had sort of become Iowa fans while they were going through their own difficulties, like going through surgeries and hospitals and treatments and all that. And once people start talking about what Caitlin means to them for their lives, like outside of what the wins and losses are, yeah, it is very difficult not to get emotional at that point. That was certainly the tear jerking part of the experience. But in terms of the game itself, Iowa jumped out to that 18-1 lead, and the crowd was volcanic the entire way through. And USC did battle back, but they basically emptied their gas tank at the end of the first half to even the game up. And Iowa's crowd was over 100 decibels for most of the game whenever Iowa made a shot. And it was just constant, constant volume. And when I talked to the USC players after the game, they said that they like being in those environments, but it's just so difficult to communicate with your teammates, so difficult to keep your composure in those moments. And, if Iowa's crowd does not show up like that for that game, very good chance that USC comes out and wins that and is able to establish a little bit of um, that composure that they were missing for the game. So yeah, that was an incredible moment for the fans, and then they were rewarded very, very handsomely after the game with that ceremony itself.
And you mentioned the start of the game, 18-1 in that first quarter, which is absolutely insane against the number four team in the country and JuJu Watkins, who is by some accounts the heir apparent to Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, she is, by some accounts. And the game on Sunday just sort of proved a couple things. One, that she is a very, very talented scorer, and even more talented when she gets a friendly whistle. She very much got a superstar whistle on Sunday, and you don't have to look very hard on social media to find pretty strong evidence of that. But she is a very, very talented scorer. She had 18 in the first half, and there were times where Iowa's defense just could not do a whole lot about her, regardless of what the whistles were doing. But she is not the quite the take over the game in every facet type of player that Caitlin Clark is. And to some extent, Caitlin wasn't this level of player when she was a sophomore either. Right. That real game manager stuff really started to manifest itself in her last two seasons. And, obviously it propelled Iowa to the Final Four. So I would like to see a little bit better passing out of JuJu. I'd like to see a little bit better, um, you know, defense. It's not bad, but I'd like to see her sort of stack the stuff or stuff the stat sheet. There we go. A little bit more consistently, sort of the way that Caitlin did. If we want to be putting Juju up into that, sort of stratosphere of ball players, she is easily a top two player this season. I think Hannah Hidalgo is about the only player that's close at this point, and sort of has a case to make for being the player of the year too. Lauren Betts I'd put way up there. Iowa will be seeing her imminently, but by and large, JuJu did not play like an all-star who can just put a team on her back for 40 minutes and say, I'm winning this game. She was close. She was very close, but you can't walk into Carver Hawkeye with the fans doing, the way that they played or the, their volume and all that. And, that was, I think to me, the message to JuJu was, here's how much better you have to get. Right. Here is, if you want to be part of the gold standard, here it is. And she is only a sophomore and she's fun to watch, but that was sort of the proof that there is really only one GOAT in women's college basketball right now.
Yeah, she had 6 in the second half, right? 6
Nine.
points, 9. Oh,
Actually, either 8 or 9. It was single digits though. She had 18 in the first half.
did Iowa do anything differently in the second half that slowed her down, or what did it look like?
The coaches are always coy about that. Lindsay Gottlieb, the USC coach, she didn't say that Iowa had made a bunch of huge adjustments, and Jan, you know, always just chalks it up to her team just wanting it more in the second half, sort of stuff like that. And to some extent, yeah, she got 18 points out of Lucy Olsen in the second half after 5 in the first. No, 23 out of Lucy in the second half after 5 in the first. That's it. So there was something to that. But in terms of a big defensive adjustment, and we saw a little bit of zone it from Iowa at one point, but by and large, this was just go right at JuJu, make her work on both ends of the floor for 40 minutes. And eventually it worked. It didn't in the first half, but eventually it worked.
You mentioned Lucy, and that was kind of one of my big takeaways from the game. Well, kind of twofold. One, she was phenomenal, just awesome. Like that is why you go out and get her out of the portal, obviously, is for games like that. But just the way Iowa was able to finish that game, especially in the fourth quarter, like such a turnaround from, when they had that losing streak a few weeks ago. What was some of the recurring factors? Well, they couldn't close out games. They couldn't make shots in the fourth quarter. They couldn't make free throws in the fourth quarter. They cost themselves some wins in that stretch because they just weren't making plays. And then on Sunday against the number 4 team in the country, who had battled back to take a 1-point lead at half and had a little bit of a lead in the third quarter. Iowa kept kind of staying close enough, but USC was kind of threatening to pull away a little bit, and then Iowa just took over in the fourth quarter and really controlled that game to close it out. And that to me was really impressive. Like that was just tremendous growth from this team from what we saw a few weeks ago. What did it look like to you in person?
Yeah, it was a lot of the same thing. And the contributions that Lucy Olsen was making in that second half, just impossible to ignore. And you could tell how much the fans were sort of rallying around her. And they understood pretty quickly that they were watching something special. In terms of how Iowa closed that game out, you mentioned the free throws, and for most of the game, it sort of looked like this was another really shaky day for Iowa at the line. They were 10 for 17 at one point. USC was, I think they had only missed 1 or 2 by comparison. Iowa hit its last 11 free throws, including all 7 in the fourth quarter. And that was such an enormous part of how Iowa put that game away. I mean, you look at the scoring in the fourth quarter, USC never had consecutive scores. Like Iowa would not let them stack those stops, get that run together, and make that final push. Iowa, for those last 10 minutes, Hawkeyes said, not today, not today, and kept getting the buckets they needed, whether it was Olsen or O'Grady. They had 23 of Iowa's 25 points, and I think O'Grady assisted on 4 more of Lucy's points too. So, just an incredible effort by both of them. O'Grady making some of the best plays of her life, especially on the boards in traffic. I mentioned on Twitter, she's had better scoring days. That game, especially that fourth quarter, might have been Addison O'Grady's best game as a Hawkeye, full stop. The way that she took over that game against a top 5 team with no shortage of talent in the middle, It was sort of a plus size, like the Pokemon level up version of the game that she had against LSU last season in the tournament when she helped Iowa get to that Final Four, because that could have gone sideways against a smaller center like Hannah Stuelke too. USC presented a lot of those same matchup problems late in the stretch of the game. And Addison O'Grady responded with her best game, again, as a Hawkeye. And she was certainly feeling like it in the press conference afterwards. Like, for someone who's been the proverbial punching bag in seasons past, and who a lot of folks thought wasn't, going to come back, was going to transfer out or something, she looked like she, was the queen of Hawkeyedom in that moment. Like, she was having that fun of a time in the press conference. And, 3 wins in a row, and one that she had such an instrumental part in, that's earned confidence, if anything, right? Like, go ahead, talk your stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see if that sort of boost in confidence, which we saw a few green shoots of it, early in the season when she could just score in the middle at will. But now that she's actually bringing that game up, we'll see if that confidence lasts for the rest of the year for this home stretch.
Yeah, you mentioned some of her playmaking. Sorry, Elliot, I'll just
Okay.
interject quickly here. She had a just phenomenal pass to a cutting Olsen in the fourth quarter. That was just one of the highlights of the game. I mean, just absolute perfection.
That
Yeah,
was
and especially in that moment, real quick, in that moment, and what that did for the score too, like that was one of those moments where the fans were like, "Oh, we're actually doing this."
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a great moment. Sorry, Alec.
that was that was beautiful basketball by Addie O'Grady, and that was one of those moments where it's like she rose to the occasion. I tweeted something about Lucy Olsen rising to the occasion, which was amazing. I mean, she was phenomenal in the second half. To see Addie do that as well, and have Hannah Stuelke on the bench the entire fourth quarter and a decent chunk of the third quarter too, is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, and it was foul trouble when we asked Jan Jensen about it afterwards, because you don't often see Hannah Stuelke on the bench for the last 14 minutes of the game. But uh, Jensen was like, no, she was just being a selfless teammate, and she had the sort of opposite end of the spectrum of the whistle from JuJu, because JuJu had drawn, I want to say, 11 or 12 fouls over the course of the game. Hannah drew a few, but again, you look on social media afterwards, and you could also tell during the game as well. But she's getting hit on the arm on shot attempts. She got a ton of contact in the middle, rarely got a whistle on it, and you could tell that it was frustrating her too. But when she was on the bench and watching her teammates, help spark that comeback, she was as big of a cheerleader as anybody. And, the coaches know that, the coaches see that, teammates see that. And that's always been the culture at Iowa. So, it was certainly surprising enough to see her on the bench that both Chad and I asked Jan about that after the game. And she was like, no, there's no status change there. And with her recent concussion, everyone's like, uh-oh. But no, like it wasn't anything like that. It was sort of working the matchups, and the fact that Iowa had O'Grady behind Stuelke is sort of one of those, good problems to have in that moment.
I mean,
And if Go
O'Grady
ahead.
had the hottest of hands in that fourth quarter, so just hide that.
Yeah, and that really takes a whole lot of confidence from a coach,
Yes.
especially when it means having Hannah Stuelke on the bench against the top four team in the nation.
Yep.
And if that goes sideways, Jensen doesn't look great.
That's the
But
first. That's the first question in the press conference after the game is why didn't Hannah play?
yeah, yeah, if not the second and the third on top of that too.
Yeah.
But that is sort of what it's also a reminder that this is not Jan Jensen's first season coaching basketball. It's just her first season as the head coach. And she has as many mentors, or as quality of mentors as you could ask. Two of them, Jenny Fitzgerald and Lisa Bluter, were in the house yesterday, or on Sunday. So she has an almost embarrassment of experience, and people to sort of lean on in those moments. So she has earned a little bit more benefit of the doubt than most first year head coaches would have for sort of, I don't want to say wacky, but unexpected personnel moves like that. And so it's always fascinating to see it actually like play out in real time. And so far, we're talking about a 3-game winning streak, including over USC for the same Hawkeyes that had that 5-game losing streak when they were, playing away from that small ball. So the formula seems to be working for now. They've got 7 games until the Big Ten tournament, have started to work their way back into the ESPN bracketology. I know Charlie Cream's got them as a last four in, or like last four by teams in at this point. So right now, they're on the right side of the bubble. They've got 7 games to stay on that right side of the bubble. It's going to be difficult, but there are opportunities to really solidify their position too. So this is, the heat of the tourney race at this point. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.
The one other thing I wanted to add before we get out of here, and Ross, I know you got to get going here shortly, but one thing I wanted to add about the women's team is, man, it's as little as I've been able to watch this year. I'm impressed with Aaliyah Guyton every time she steps on the floor. Her ball denial of JuJu in the first half, her willingness to defend and not bat an eye, arguably the best player in the country, is just like, and to have all those big time recruits in the building on top of that, on top of having Taylor Stremlow in this freshman class, man, the future is only getting brighter for this team. And that's quite a statement after the Caitlin Clark era. But as things currently sit, it's continuing to get brighter, and presumably I was able to get some of those players, because how do you leave Carver Hawkeye on Sunday and think, I don't want to play here, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's also such a contrast to a lot of the environments that some of these recruits, the higher level recruits, are going to see that aren't Iowa, that aren't going to have 15,000 fans, that aren't going to be, ear piercing sort of environments like that. Like that was the best environment that college basketball is going to see this year. Full stop, flat out. You're not going to get it better than that. And when you're talking about recruits like Kate Harpering, who's a top 2 recruit in ESPN for 2026, Finley Chastain, top 20, Addie Deal, commit in top 20. Journey Houston had been top 20 before her knee injury. She's starting to cook again for Davenport North, I want to say. She's a commit for 2025. She was in the house. Jayliana Guy, again, top 20 recruit. Who am I? Addison Bjorn, top 20 recruit. Jenica Lewis, top 20 recruit, all for their classes. Like this was an embarrassment of riches. And the conversations I've had so far has been a whole lot of it's early. Right. There's a lot of thinking that has to be done yet in the recruiting. And, most of these girls still have high school careers that they are focusing on right now. But I don't think Iowa could have put a better foot forward. And I'm not sure what schools in America could have put a better foot forward for recruiting and for showing that this is not only Caitlin Clark's school, but a school where the next superstar can excel as well. Um, that was as comprehensive a value proposition by the Iowa women's basketball team as anybody in America could have made on Sunday. Ross, I know we got to get you out of here, but I wanted to make sure we got that in there too.
And I think we'll wrap it up here. We appreciate you hopping on to this episode of HawkCast, brought to you by Iowa.Rivals.com. If you're not a premium subscriber yet, we're still covering all things recruiting. Going to be a big weekend for the men's team this weekend with a couple big targets on campus. And of course, spring is football recruiting and spring ball on the way. So join us there for premium content, iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. If you're not subscribed here on YouTube, do that today as well. Drop a like, drop a comment, let us know what you're thinking about Hawkeye sports. And of course, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, do the same. Don't forget to leave that rate and review. Helps us out a lot. So do that there, por favor. For now, I am Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter. We will see you next time.